Antony the Great, 251 to 356, was a Christian monk from Egypt, revered since his death as a saint. He was the best known of the so-called Desert Fathers, those who lived an ascetic life as a hermit. A biography, The Life of Antony, was written shortly after he died, and this became a popular, much-read work, being translated into a number of languages. He is considered to have been the father of monasticism. A legend began to accrue around him of how, as a hermit, he was tempted by devils and overcame them. The first depiction of his temptation was as early as the 10th century, but it became a well-visited subject for artists during the 15th century, and this continues even today. Bosch's Temptations of St. Anthony is now in the National Museum in Lisbon, Portugal. It is documented as having been in the possession of Damião de Góis, a writer, humanist philosopher and intellectual, who in 1523 was sent by the Portuguese king to Antwerp. Dendrochronological analysis of the panel on which it was painted date it to around 1501. The painting thus probably predates the Garden of Earthly Delights and the Last Judgment triptychs. It is the most copied of Bosch's works, with at least 20 versions coming from the hands of his followers. The painting shows the three most significant stages in the life of St. Anthony. The left panel shows him at the beginning of his struggle with temptation in the desert. The middle panel shows him in his hermit's cell at the height of his persecution by demons, while the right panel depicts him in older age, having conquered temptation. The left panel has two depictions of the saint. He is seen carried into the sky, and in the lower part he is being supported and led by friends after suffering a collapse. Here he is being borne aloft by a winged toad. He clasps his hands together in prayer, doubtless calling on God to save him. He is surrounded by three other demonic tableaux. On the left, a fish-scaled knight riding on a fish, his head ablaze with fire, holds out a fish as a weapon to attack the saint. A fox-like demon is also being carried aloft by the toad. It holds a branch of a tree with which to beat the saint. Above, to the right, what appears to be a whale carries a boat on its back. In the prow, a demon bends over and presents its posterior to the saint. This boat tows a small craft in which a toad adopts the posture of a handstand and attracts a flock of birds. A large bug, its bottom emitting smoke, carries a scythe to attack St. Anthony. Below this scene in the heavens is a large lake in which we see a number of ships, one of which is on fire. The scene in the skies is being observed by a giant kneeling man who has been incorporated into the earth so as to form a tavern. This may be an allusion to Antony's hermit's cell. The demons have turned it from a place of spiritual contemplation into a place of temptation and indulgence in the lower pleasures of life. A woman looks out from the gloom of the doorway, while another woman is seen through a window. In Bosch's time, inns were often seen as brothels. The giant figure gazes up at the scene with St. Anthony, and an arrow has pierced his forehead. To the right, on the road leading to this man tavern, are three demons. One has adopted the form of a bishop. His demonic nature is revealed by the flames emerging from his mitre, and his crozier, instead of being capped by the cross, bears the crescent moon. In Bosch's time, the Moors, or Muslims, were considered as enemies of Christianity, and one of their key symbols was the crescent moon. The false bishop has two companions, a spoon-billed monk and a red-robed stag. He points to the tavern, suggesting they go there. On the road to the left, a demonic cricket-fish hybrid proceeds towards the tavern. Beneath, a demon with the rear end of a horse plays on bagpipes. The foreground is taken up with this scene on a bridge. Here, St. Anthony, having fallen into a faint after being assailed by demons in the sky, is being carried along by two Franciscan monks and what appears to be a peasant or commoner in a red coat. The path they are on leads into the central panel, where he will be more deeply tested by demonic visions. Under the wooden bridge over which they're going, we see a false priest with two companion demons, one adopting a winged rat form in the act of drawing his dagger. The priest is reading from a document bearing an official seal. This could be seen as a devilish inquisition in which charges against the saint are being made. A strange little bird man skates across the frozen stream, bearing a letter with a wax seal, possibly to add further charges to the proceedings. The text on the letter reads, Proteo, a contraction of the Latin protestatio, meaning an indictment. He is wearing a funnel on his head, which Bosch sometimes used to suggest stupidity. St. Anthony is placed at the exact centre of the central panel. Following the account in the life of St. Anthony, Bosch is depicting him in his cell at the height of his torments by devils. On the top left, flying demons are descending to set a village ablaze. One adopting human form rides on a flying fish, while another in toad shape is riding upon a winged disc or egg. In the houses at the front of the village, its inhabitants continue their ordinary lives, undertaking their daily tasks, unaware of the catastrophe that is about to overwhelm them. The fire has already burnt down some buildings and is rapidly consuming the forest. A church is completely ablaze, its spire collapsing. On the top right, a battle is taking place in the skies between a swan-necked flying boat, which has a fire burning inside its belly, and a vessel containing a winged helmeted warrior with shield and lance. In the middle ground is a ruined round tower, its interior being exposed through its roof having collapsed. St. Anthony kneels at the entrance to the sacred space before the altar. This is likely to be a construct of the devils to persecute the saint. He gazes out at the viewer of the painting, raising his fingers in the gesture of blessing. On the shoulder of his habit is a Tau cross, the symbol he adopted. He is surrounded by demons adopting human form. Beside him is a woman wearing a wimple which she has pulled back to show her face and neck. She holds out a silver or pewter bowl to a nun, seemingly intended for her to take it. This nun has a companion, a head of a man with legs, but no torso or arms. He wears a black cloth on his head, like a turban, and has a golden cup set before his mouth. To the left of St. Anthony, a little group of figures stand around a circular table. They appear to be performing a caricature of the Mass. The fake priest, in a pink costume, appears to be officiating. He holds out a gold cup, probably containing wine, from the pitcher on the round table. We see this scene mirrored in another part of the painting, where high up on a tower we find a similar round table is laid out with its pitcher of wine, and a monk and a woman appear to be enjoying the wine rather than enacting a mass. A black-skinned woman emerges from a niche, holding up a plate on which a small pink-skinned toad holds up the circular wafer of the host. These devils seek to torment St. Anthony by working under his very nose this blasphemous parody of the Mass. Heading the congregation lined up to partake in the Mass is a pig-snouted musician. Under his arm is a lute, and he holds the lead of a small dog wearing a jester's cap and bells. He reverently bends his knee as he approaches the circular altar. On his head an owl perches. Behind him is a crippled man, dressed like a beggar. A hurdy-gurdy is slung around his neck. Two small dogs, wearing coats, lead the other congregants. A bowman, with metal gauntlets and wearing a tree trunk as headdress, seems to be rushing to join the pig-headed man and the hurdy-gurdy player. He drags with him a two-legged monster with a long tusk. Shortly behind him is a man with a beaked snout, wearing a cracked pot as a helmet. He holds aloft a pole with a wheel used to execute thieves. Part of a human leg is still attached to the wheel. A knight in armour brings up the rear. St. Anthony kneels at the entrance to the sacred space. A devil, whose snout is a wind instrument, is walking into the space, his instrument sending forth fumes and sparks. A shaft of light, emitted by the burning church, shines into the darkness. At the back of this space, in a niche, an altar covered with a white cloth has been set up. On this stands a conventional crucifix with the body of Christ and his suffering. A single candle burns. Beside this altar stands the figure of Christ. He wears a dark cloak, and his head is surrounded by a dark halo. He looks out anxiously towards St. Anthony and raises his fingers in blessing. Whether this is a true vision of Christ is uncertain. It may be another deception of the demons. Christ here is wearing a black cloak when one might expect him to be clothed in light, and his dark halo may indicate this is a demonic image. Perhaps Bosch left this image ambiguous. Examination of this area using X-ray spectroscopy reveals an underpainting radically differing from what Bosch finally painted. Instead of the altar with Christ, in the sacred space before St. Anthony, was set a tent in which the circular table was placed. At this, a Moorish-styled figure wearing a Naqshbandi turban officiates at the fake Mass. Beside him is a spoon-billed demon carrying a lute. Perhaps Bosch's intention always was to portray the space before St. Anthony as a realm of demons. He may have thought this too simplistic, and instead created the dark-robed and haloed Christ as being a more intriguing and disturbing one. Part of the right side of the ruined building has survived. It bears a series of carvings of scenes from the Old Testament. At the top we see Moses receiving the tablets of the law from the hand of God. Beside him is the golden calf, which is being worshipped by idolatrous Moorish dancers. On the ground at their feet is a turtle. Below this, other idol worshippers are presenting animals as sacrifices to a monkey-headed statue. An owl gazes out from a cave. In the lowest carving, two men carry a large bunch of grapes, a reference to the story in the biblical book of Numbers, to the scouts of the Israelites returning from the land of Canaan. Lower down, leaning against the platform around the sacred space, are three demons. At the front of this group, a devil, in the form of an animal-snouted, tonsured monk in spectacles, reads from a book with dark pages. He has two companions who urge him on. Through a rip in the back of his cloak, we see his ribs exposed and some of his entrails are falling out. They may be mocking the Bible or reading a text of black magic. Further along, a man with a tall hat is seated, taking in the scene. He has a crutch by his side, and on a cloth laid out before him is a severed human foot. It was a common device of beggars at that time, to parade a foot they may have taken from a thief's execution in order to elicit the sympathy of almsgivers. Further to the left, one can just make out the image of a magician's circle drawn on the platform. You can see this double circle with sigils drawn inside it more clearly in this even higher resolution image. As with the wooden bridge in the left panel, the platform under the tower has a circular tunnel where water from the river can flow. On the left bank of this river is a large red fruit which has broken open. This is similar to images used in Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights. A demon forms itself into the image of a nun seated in a barrel, brandishing a sword above her head. In front, an armoured figure wearing a green cloak and with the skull of a horse plays on a harp. This rides on a two-legged beast who lowers its head to drink from the river. On the river itself, two strange craft encounter one another. One is in the form of a fish wearing a red robe. At its stern, two dark-skinned demons draw in their nets to take up their catch of fish. The other boat is like a hollowed-out mallard duck, within which a bespectacled man is lying. A dark-skinned demon rides on the back of the duck and holds up a sail on which the skin of a ray or skate is shown. This mallard boat tows behind it a coracle with a small, childlike demon. A group of 5 demonic riders depart from the central ruined tower and move off to the right across the shallow river. At the rear is a winged figure with a head like a thistle. He holds a hawk on his right hand and has his hunting horn strung over his shoulder. He rides a horse whose body has become a jug. A tree woman riding a giant rat holds a young child bound in swaddling clothes. The others in the procession are dressed as noblemen. Behind them, across the wider part of the river, in which some people are swimming, are two large buildings. One butts against St. Anthony's ruined tower and presents a rectangular face, having an upper gallery in which we can glimpse a band of demons. It bears a clock which, instead of hours, shows the signs of the zodiac. As it has only a single hand, it probably marks out the months of the year. The other building is egg-shaped. In its upper part, its skins have decayed and been somewhat drawn back, so that from its top a dovecot-like structure has emerged, from which a woman gazes down into the pool below. Flames emerge out of the top, suggesting its demonic nature. As we noticed before, a group of monks have established themselves under the canopy and appear to be indulging in drinking wine in the company of a woman. The central panel shows St. Anthony in his cell, experiencing his most intense encounters with demons, who are attempting to destroy his faith by disrupting his immersion in and steadfast contemplation of the Spirit. We must assume that St. Anthony is alone here, and that all the various forms around him are woven by demons. In the right panel, we see an older St. Anthony. He is sitting on a rocky outcrop beside a stream in an open landscape, leaning on his staff and holding in his hands an open book, likely to be the Bible. He is still being assailed by demonic apparitions, but seems now less troubled by their presence and more at ease with himself. High in the heavens, a couple ride on a flying fish. The man carries a pole over his shoulder, at the end of which is a little basket of fire. In this painting, Bosch often uses fire as an indication of the presence of a demon. The top section of the painting shows a large walled town under siege by an army. Numerous soldiers are attacking the tower on the right, armed with swords and pikes. One soldier has climbed a ladder to gain access to this round tower, on top of which is a gourd-shaped structure somewhat reminiscent of the building on the right of the central panel. A similar structure is found in Bosch's Adoration of the Magi. On one of the bastions of the walled defences of this tower, a statue in a black human form kneels, bearing a globe on its back. Upon this globe is set a flag, bearing a crescent moon. In the moat surrounding the walls, various creatures are swimming. A man clothed in white, brandishing a sword, is attacking a black fire-breathing demonic dragon. Other black creatures appear to be carrying off their prey. St. Anthony is surrounded by 4 demonic tableaux, which appear to have distracted him from his meditations. On the left, we see a dead tree, upon which a red cloth has been draped. Within the trunk of this tree, a naked young woman bathes in the water of the stream. The opening in the tree suggests a vulva, and as she gazes out at the saint, she pulls a diaphanous veil across her in a false gesture of modesty, which instead is quite suggestive. To the right, a winged toad demon lies on its back, in much the same position as the toad that carried St. Anthony aloft in the left panel. He holds up a shallow bowl to receive red wine poured from a jug by a blue-robed woman. A rat-faced demon looks out from underneath the red canopy and seizes a fish that has been shot by an arrow. St. Anthony is clearly aware of this demonic temptress, but appears not to be attracted by her charms. Behind him, a demon wearing red moves away from St. Anthony. It is placed within a child's walking frame and has a whirligig child's toy set in the folds of its cowl. In the foreground is a round table, similar to the two we have seen in the central panel. This one is half covered with a white cloth, from the centre of which a little demon emerges. On the cloth is set a wine pitcher and some bread, again perhaps suggestive of a mass. Though there are no false priests depicted here, only a dark-bodied demon looks over the side of the table. This table is supported by two human figures, one holding it up on his shoulder, while the other is inverted and taking its weight on his feet. The standing figure has one foot in a jug, while his other leg appears crippled, as he has to support that side on a crutch. His companion is having his throat slit by a rat-faced demon. A trumpeter in a blue cowl stands beside the table. His strange instrument has another horn emerging from its mouth. From this additional horn, noxious smoke emerges, and upon it hangs a grub or insect-like form. On the right-hand corner, we see a demon with a large pot belly, shrouded in a red robe. It has both its feet placed in the same shoe. It has been stabbed in the belly by a large dagger. It may be tempting to read this as a temptation by gluttony, set opposite the temptation to lust. We can see that Bosch was very familiar with the account of the life of St. Anthony. In creating his painting, he drew on the images of demons familiar in Bosch's time, that he probably would have seen in the work of earlier artists and in illuminated manuscripts, which he amplified through his wonderful pictorial imagination. We can view this painting as having only one human being in it, St. Anthony. All the other figures are demons and deceiving spirits. As we know, such spirits do not exist, but could only be a product of St. Anthony's imagination and inner fears. Whether Bosch understood this or not, in this painting he created a picture of what he thought St. Anthony experienced. Bosch's demons are not truly horrific, but are amusing and entertaining. It is this that endears his painting to viewers today. It is obvious that Bosch was a conventional Christian, but he was clearly a close observer of ordinary life. His humour is often coarse and close to the world of the common people. 1,000 years after his death, St. Anthony's legend constructed him into a universal figure for the uncertainty of faith, the insubstantiality of belief, and consequently the projection of inner insecurities onto outer forms of demonic tempting spirits. In attempting to live a life withdrawn from normal passions and needs, this state of repression could be experienced as temptations by demons, when it was merely one's normal healthy feelings that were surfacing. Our culture has moved on from its late medieval absurdities, and St. Anthony is no longer a figure we can relate to or especially admire. But Bosch created images that still intrigue us today.